Threat assessment is one of the most underexplored aspects of Commander, in my opinion. I've seen countless people saying, just hit that, it'll win if it resolves. And while we could argue back and forth all day that some cards are kill on sight and others aren't, I'm looking to delve into why we feel things should be considered threatening and later on how we can use this to our advantage. There are two main emotions that lead to people feeling intimidated by a deck, and those are fear and frustration. This makes sense, right? If you think about a combo deck that wins out of nowhere, you deem them threatening because you're afraid they're going to seize an opportunity and capitalize on it in a disproportional magnitude. Whereas, if we think about the opposite end of the spectrum, getting staxed out and not being allowed to interact with your opponent and their game plan can be very frustrating. It's a safe assumption that after each of these encounters, there may be lasting effects on the player's decision making when deeming something as threatening or not. They may look like a ghost enslave them if they see a consecrated sphinx or hullbreaker horror, but not a care in the world to a baleful force or tree shaker chimera. Why is it that cards like the Great Henge stick around for far longer than it should? Everyone knows it should die immediately, otherwise the card advantage can single-handedly win games. But it sticks around anyways. Even though this card is incredibly strong, unless people fear it or are frustrated by it, they save their removal. These two factors are that which decide if a card stays on your battlefield or gets swept up as soon as it hits the board. If someone has been one-shot by Scion of the Ur-Dragon enough times, they'll start to keep it off the table at all costs. Same goes for if they've been stasis locked. So, how do we use this to our advantage, like I alluded to previously? Don't run things that people want to remove. If we imagine a world where we don't get targeted with any single target removal, where would we assume that all goes? Our opponents. Just because we can be doing the strongest thing at the table doesn't mean we should be. We have to remember that this is a game of permission. You are only allowed to be as threatening as your opponents allow you to be. If we're the only one following this rule, then people are going to not only use their removal, which spends resources, but they're using it on your opponents, which helps you out even more. The blue shell doesn't exist for second place. Don't worry, we aren't going to be playing bad cards. There are tons of good cards that don't see lots of play and are extremely underrated. As a $25 budget player, I've noticed that staples tend to have lots of fear associated with them due to their power. If people recognize a card only because they know it's powerful, that's a bad sign. We want to run cards that give us advantage without attracting attention before it's too late. People may read Elder Brain and realize it's a decent card and want it removed, but no way are they going to actually hit it over an AC. If we want our decks to perform better and win more games, we need to make sacrifices. We can't just run tons of tutors, combos, and generic staples because it'll let us win some games, but it'll also lead to us getting our face beat in by dragons in another game where you've got nothing but lands in hand. Decks need allowance. We aren't looking to brute force overpower every opponent like archenemy. That means we need to remember this is a 4-player free-for-all, not a 1v3. There may be concerns as far as if our opponents know our game plan, they won't let us do it anymore, right? Then we're just playing worse cards and getting targeted by the rest of the table. This is surely a one-trick pony kind of strategy, right? Well, not exactly. This assumption requires our deck to be incapable of playing like every other deck, which is not what I'm preaching. I'm not saying to build something that requires all of your opponents to fight amongst themselves while you build a doomsday engine defenseless. Our decks still need to be able to ward off threats and keep ourselves alive by any means necessary, but there will be games where people do want to target you and you need to be ready for that. However, what I'm offering is a playstyle adjustment. Just because we can tussle with the rest of the crowd doesn't mean we should. If four people of equal fighting prowess got into a fight, it would be advantageous to be the one sitting back and letting the other three exhaust themselves. Obviously, if it's made obvious that's the game plan, everyone else might then target that individual. But it in no way means they can't fight. Nor does this have to be the case. Just because our game plan is to sit back and let everyone else fight doesn't mean we need to be so obvious about it. We still intend on throwing out an occasional removal spell, committing to the board every now and then, or even wiping the board. What we don't mention is that while everyone else is duking it out, we're going to greed. And greed hard. We're going to ramp for tons of lands, draw tons of cards, and set ourselves up to have the most resources possible after everyone else has depleted theirs, all while keeping the table from threatening to remove us. As long as we don't instill fear or frustration in our opponents, they have no reason to look our way until we're in a position to take them all on at once. Even if everyone knows what we're doing, we're still fine. This is a game where everyone is trying to set up their doomsday machine and blast the table first. People can't always afford to knock down the tortoise when there are three hares all trying to blitz the finish line. As the old proverb goes, slow and steady wins the race. People have this expectation that games tend to end on turn 6, but how often does that really happen? In a pod that all responsibly runs removal, I haven't seen games end before turn 8, at least with any regularity, in quite a while. Now, I feel I need to address the edge cases, where there are playgroups that functionally don't run removal and only try to blitz their combo and don't care what everyone else is doing. Believe it or not, that can actually be to our advantage. If they can't stop other people from winning, they also can't stop other people from disrupting them, which means that we can run some light stacks pieces that shut down combos, make everyone discard their hands, or heavily pressure their life totals with a big board presence. And then if they commit to the board, we wipe them back to the Stone Age with a well-placed board wipe. Removal is necessary, and there are ways to punish your opponents for not running any. If they don't want to play responsibly, they won't get to play at all. Threat assessment is pivotal in how we play our games, formulate our decks, and enact our game plans. A well-rounded understanding can not only help you win more games, but keep opponents happier too. After all, we play this game to have fun, and if our opponents don't have fun, we may not get to play our decks again. We build decks to be played with, not for our dusty shelf, and that's what I aspire to cultivate. If you like this video and think someone you know may benefit from watching it, consider sharing it with them so we can all become better deck builders together. This has been Togo's Rock, and I am out.